In March of 2023, I built this budget 4x3 metre polytunnel by Outsunny, and I did a review when I built this, and I gave my initial thoughts on the build quality of this polytunnel. I was really pleased with it actually 1 year ago, and I thought it was a really good polytunnel for the price, at only £145 at the time. I think the price has gone up slightly now. So let's fast forward 1 year later and see how it's held up in that time and what you can expect from a budget polytunnel like this one. Now, last summer we grew tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers and aubergines in this polytunnel. The tomatoes sadly succumbed to the blight. The peppers, despite being lush and leafy and pretty healthy, only gave us small green peppers at the end of the growing season, and the cucumbers and the aubergines did okay. I think the tomato blight and the poor harvest from inside this polytunnel was due to the poor weather which we had last summer. We didn't have a very good summer. So that's not an issue with the polytunnel, that's just the British weather. So let's get into the all-important stuff. How has it held up in the year that I've had it, and what can you expect from a budget polytunnel like this one 1 year later? Now, the first thing, you can clearly see that it's still here, which is a good thing. It's not gone anywhere in the wind. These polytunnels have a reputation for being blown around in the wind and going into neighbours' allotments and neighbours' gardens. Thankfully, my allotment neighbours haven't ended up with a free polytunnel. This polytunnel has not gone on tour around the allotment site. It's still here. They do need securing down if they're in a windy location, because they will. They'll go. It's still here, so that's the first good thing, but I'll show you why I think that is in a moment. Now, I said that these polytunnels blow away very easily in the wind, and to prevent that, I actually secured the base of this polytunnel to the raised bed that was already here. I actually zip tied, good old zip ties, eh? I zip tied the base to the wood, and do you know what? It's still here. The zip ties haven't broken and the frame is still sat on top of the wood. So I put these wooden battens in to stop the frame from moving side to side, which has definitely worked, and the zip ties are there to stop the frame from moving up and down, and it's done its job. It's not moved anywhere at all, and I think I've gotten away with that because we have a lot of trees next to my plot, which shelters us from the westerly winds. I think that's the reason why I've still got my polytunnel, to be honest, and if it wasn't for these trees, I probably wouldn't have this polytunnel. And if these trees weren't here, I would have probably made something a bit more sturdier. I probably would have put some poles in or some anchors into the ground to really secure this to the ground even better. I probably would have even buried the overlapping plastic, but unfortunately you don't actually end up with much overlapping plastic. Not enough to bury. And in fact, I ended up having to try and tug it down as much as possible, but we'll go and have a look at that now. Now, I actually stapled the plastic to this raised bed here, this piece of wood which the frame is sat on, and yeah, you don't have enough to bury really. Traditionally, polytunnels like this have their overlapping plastic buried maybe 6 to 12 inches to help it stay grounded so it doesn't blow away. That's what I did with my other polytunnel over there, my birch tree polytunnel. I buried all the overlapping plastic with that one, and that's usually enough on its own to keep the polytunnel down actually, to be honest. I've not got any other support on my birch tree polytunnel, it's simply just the overlapping plastic. So yeah, on this you don't get much overlapping plastic. So this particular polytunnel comes with this door at the front here, and it has this little handle which is held up okay, I suppose, does what it's supposed to do. It's a handle. What I'm not so keen on really is this, how it how the cover attaches to the frame itself. There's a massive gap there, and I found that a lot of wind was getting through here and cooling the polytunnel down quite a lot, more than I want it to be honest. That's what the vents are for at the side. You know, I don't want this leaking and all the hot air coming out of here really, because yeah, it's quite a lot. And the straps that attach it to the frame, they're actually starting to come away from the plastic. The stitching's not very good, so yeah, that's not really ideal, is it? There's only actually 4 straps attaching this to the frame. There should be more really, and it'll be more tight and it wouldn't leak. I'm not too keen on this here. Now, speaking of the vents, there are 2 of them at either side of this polytunnel, and yeah, these are the first things to go, yeah.
Oh no!
I actually can put my finger right through it without any effort, so yeah, that's not very good. Yeah, these do degrade very quickly. There's a lot of algae in here. In fact, I need to clean the entire polytunnel, to be honest. I've not cleaned it yet. I'm waiting for the water to be turned back on our allotment site. The straps on here seem to have held up very well. This plastic here, cheap plastic for the clips, does degrade very fast. It has on my other polytunnel. They do go very brittle in the sun with this sun exposure, so yeah, don't expect them to last very long. But in the past year, they've held up okay. They're still doing their job, holding this window open. Now, as for the actual quality of the plastic itself, you know, it's this traditional checkered polythene. Now, after time, the sunlight does degrade it and all these plastic squares start falling out. In the last year, it's not done that. It's actually held up pretty well. I think it is quite a thin and cheap material, thinner than my other polytunnel, actually, to be honest. That polytunnel's a little bit more expensive, but it's still a budget one like this. I did apply some anti-hotspot tape around the frame, because when the sun hits the metal on here, it heats it up, and when the plastic is touching it, it can degrade it very, very quickly. Now, with anti-hotspot tape, it stops the cover from touching the metal pipe, and it can prolong the life of your polytunnel quite a lot. Now, the polytunnel cover has these straps, and they secure the polytunnel cover to the frame. And I said it in my initial review of this video a year ago, and I'll say it again, they're about as much use as a chocolate fire guard, because yeah, they come off in your hand like that. If a little gust of wind tugs at this cover, it's just going to rip the straps straight off with no problem at all. So I didn't even bother securing them on, really, to be honest. Yeah, they're pretty useless really. Yeah, so Outsunny, if you're watching this video, please make your straps better on your polytunnels, because yeah, they're not very good at all. So yeah, so because I secured it to the ground pretty well, it doesn't really move around very much, to be honest. It's not very flimsy at all. Now, there are these extra couple of support bars as well here, which provide a good bit of extra support, actually, to be honest. They do help. And there's also a couple of support bars at the very front on either side of the door as well. Now, the quality of the frame itself, pretty good. Not the thickest pipes, not like a big commercial polytunnel where they're really big and really thick, but I think they're 25mm in diameter, and yeah, they've not bent, they've not rusted at all, but it's not touching anywhere that's moist. You know, it's on top of this wood here and it's off the ground, it's not touching any soil, so you know, it is dry, so that I think is the reason why it's not rusted. If you had this sat on top of soil or buried underground even, you're definitely going to have a problem with it rusting, because I can't see these holding up very long in a very moist environment. So the verdict, 1 year later, it's a pretty decent polytunnel for the price, to be honest. £145 for a 4x3 metre polytunnel. It's not too bad at all, really. It's really cheap, and it's going to do the job, really, isn't it? It's going to provide a warmer environment for you to grow many vegetables in, especially things like tomatoes, peppers, aubergines, cucumbers, melons, you name it. You're going to be able to grow plenty of things in here and really extend the growing season, and you're going to get the benefit out of it as well. So I know a lot of polytunnels like this, especially Outsunny, have quite a bit of bad press about them being cheaply built, poor quality, blowing away in the wind, and yeah, completely getting destroyed by the wind. Yeah, that's true, but I think that's also down to your location. You know, some people have a windier location. I have these trees here which do shelter me quite a bit, so that's why my polytunnel is still here. So you do need to bear that in mind. If you're in a windier spot, you're going to have to secure it down pretty well. You'll have to bury the plastic if you have enough overlapping plastic. This one doesn't. Or you're going to have to provide some other means of support and anchor it down into the ground. I've done something here and that works for me, but you may need to get a kit off Amazon, for example, to anchor the polytunnel into the ground. So to conclude, you get what you pay for, to be honest with you. The piping's pretty thin, the stitching's not great, the windows at the side are going to degrade after the first year. You know, the mesh is going to start falling through. The plastic's pretty thin. So would I recommend this polytunnel by Outsunny 1 year later? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, I would, to be honest, but you will have to do a few extra things to make sure that it lasts, like the anti-hotspot tape, for example, as well, not just the extra support. So I hope this video gave you some value and helped you, and also gave you some clarity on what you can expect from a polytunnel like this 1 year later. So that's all for now. Happy gardening and stay safe.